Three,
Three,
two,
two,
one.
one.
Launch to Success with Vera V.
V.
Hi, I'm Vera V, and welcome to my podcast, Launch to Success. I'm a full-time content creator, social media coach, and a self-improvement lover. And for this podcast episode, we have a bunch of tea, which is why I literally have a tumbler with some tea in it, because it's all about relationships. Well, I'll be talking to a relationship coach. We'll be talking about how to create a healthy relationship, the importance of communication, toxic relationships. We'll also spill both of our tea about our exes, so forth and so on. This podcast episode is all about relationships, which is one of my personal favorite topics, and I'm joined by Aleksandra. Aleksandra, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Aleksandra, like Vera just said. I am a relationship coach. I got my bachelor's in psychology from UCI in 2020, and I've always been really passionate about working with people. I've always loved doing it. And now I'm also in grad school to become a therapist in a year and a half. So it's just my lifelong career.
That's so exciting. Obviously, I love talking about relationships. I made a podcast episode on it a few months back, but it's really cool to have like an expert professional opinion on our conversation. So my first question is, what made you want to become a relationship coach specifically? Why that sphere?
Because I think that the experience I've had in my personal life also kind of gives me a different perspective on it. And the relationship I have built right now for the past 2.5 years is very different from the majority of relationships that I see, at least online. And I know that I can help people. And so it's not only something that I do well, it's also something that I really like doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if you go to all our listeners here, if you go to @RealAlexandra on Instagram, you're Alexandra on TikTok, and I think YouTube is what handle?
Real.Alexandra.
Real.Alexandra, yeah. The relationship she has built with her current boyfriend partner is absolutely amazing. Like Pinterest board. I would pin it.
But it's real though.
Okay. It is real, but it just looks so amazing. So regarding the topics they'll be covering today, first we'll talk about how relationships impact your life success. We'll talk about toxic relationships and exes, and of course we'll get to how to create your dream relationships and where to actually meet your partner, touching on some hot topics like dating apps. So first things first, I hear this a lot when talking to young people about relationships specifically. But do you feel like being in a relationship stumps your personal or career growth in any way?
I personally don't think so. Well, I mean, it depends on what kind of relationship you're in. If you're in a really unhappy, toxic, limiting relationship, then yes, it limits all of your growth, in my opinion. But I think if you're in a very healthy, encouraging relationship with a lot of trust and freedom and respect, then no, it should only like motivate your growth in a sense. What do you think?
Do you feel like with your personal relationship, you have found that to be the case, where your current partner pushes you to be the best version of yourself?
Yeah, I feel like we both do that to each other. Maybe not necessarily like, wow, I look at him, he wakes up at 6 a.m. to go to the gym, and now I need to go to the gym. Not to that extent, but I just know that we are working together and building our future and building a life together, and everyone has their own passions and activities they like to do, but we're doing it for like a common goal.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say that common goal is?
Just how we see our life, when we want to have kids, and what kind of house we want to have, and what kind of opportunities, where we want to travel. Just vague stuff like that. We don't plan it to the T.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So so 5 years from now, I'll be living in this house, on this address, in this road.
No, I think Ian's more like that, but for me, I can't see myself 6 months from now, so I can't visualize that. I can't plan that far ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
What's your take on this topic?
I was about to share. Yeah, I hear a lot, honestly, from a lot of my followers. And when I was doing a lot of life coaching, that was a big concern for people about not wanting to get into a relationship because it would stump them career-wise or personal growth-wise. But I think exactly like Alexandra said, if you're with the right person who truly enhances your life and motivates and inspires you, then that only increases. Because I know in my current relationship now, tea time. I haven't shared this before, but I feel like I became a lot more relaxed in a sense, which allowed more opportunities to flow into my life. Because before I met my current boyfriend, I was so incredibly rigid about like schedules, like waking up at like 4 a.m., 5 like I couldn't fathom my life without it. I thought I had to do that to be successful. But seeing him live like a more free flowing life, that inspired me a lot. So I took a lot of stuff for myself as well.
You want to tell them a little teeny tiny story of how you used to schedule your dates, like literally to the minute?
I still do that.
No, but I feel like you're more easygoing now. Before,
Yeah.
with the other person that we might talk about
Oh my
later, so
goodness.
stay
Okay.
tuned.
So as a little, we'll talk about exes, but before I met my current boyfriend, like I said, he's more just easygoing, free flowing. He's also pretty much type A. Um, one of our past dates, he was like, "Let's do." I think I told you, like a retrospective, prospective conversation where we're talking about like the perspective of a relationship, reflecting. He initiated that, so he's like very much my person. But yeah, with my previous partner, and that was like a year, more than a year ago. But I would schedule dates like I could not do it. So what I would do, and it's kind of crazy, and let me know what you think about this like sort of behavior as a relationship coach. But I knew he was busy, so every Sunday I would go, okay, so what free time slots do you have in your week? And he'd give them to me, and I'd say, okay, these won't work for me. Let's do stuff on these specific days and times.
I just felt like that particular person was limiting you in a way. Like you weren't, it didn't feel like you were free because I remember you being in that relationship or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
experience.
Ooh, yeah.
But I think that if two people are very busy, it can be a way for them to meet because, I mean, if that's the only slot that works for you, it's better than nothing. But I just know that how you were in that situation and it's just a little crazy to think
Yeah,
about.
I think I tuned the majority of myself out from that situation, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
blame you though.
What do you think role spontaneity plays in a relationship? How much of spontaneity needs to be in one, would you say?
I think it adds a lot of fun to the relationship. I've had multiple clients with the same issue of like stagnation and feeling like they're just, it's the same thing, same routine all the time. They go on a walk at 3 p.m. and they have dinner at 6 p.m. and then
Mm-hmm.
one date a month or something. And then to add like, oh, why don't we just go for a drive right now? To just add a little spontaneous adventure can really bring new memories into your life. Because you can be like, oh, remember that one hike we just randomly did on a Monday afternoon? You don't do it all the time, so it's nice to deviate from your routine and just add a little bit of spice to it.
Yeah, for sure. But would you say one thing I keep hearing about, and I think about this a lot also, is sometimes I think when you have something really good, like a very stable and consistent and predictable relationship, which is good because it's like consistent, instead of like the toxic, I don't know, what do you want to call that, roller coaster? A lot of people start to feel bored in that relationship. And so I think a lot of people also, from what I've heard, like some of my acquaintances, friends have done things like that. They just kind of self sabotage themselves. They're like, oh, like let's just break up because I want to see what else is out there. So what do you think about that?
Well, first thing is you need to talk to your partner about that and then decide what your common goal is in that situation. Otherwise,
Hmm.
if you just make, it just got boring. I'm sick of doing the dishes. I'm just gonna break up with him. Like there's something underneath there. There should be an
Yeah.
underlying issue there because it's not just about the dishes. It's not about you being bored. There's something else. You need to dig in there to figure out what that is. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
I think it's really cool that not only do you have a coaching perspective, which if you want to explain the difference between coaching and therapy, I'd love to hear that, but also like a therapy perspective where you can go deeper than just the underlying issue.
I found it to be pretty helpful, even in my practice, to I can't say combine the two because again, I'm not a licensed therapist. Don't sue
Just
me
yet.
because I
Just
do
yet.
not use any therapeutic interventions in my practice, but I do attend to emotions more than I guess just simple coaching would because coaching is very different from therapy. And when I talk to people, when we have a discovery session, link in my Instagram bio if you want to schedule one, it's free.
And link in this podcast description as well. Go on.
Yeah, make sure to check it out. Again, it's free. So when I do talk to people, I can see that some of them are not therapy clients. Like they would not benefit from therapy. They just want to do coaching, which just takes you how you are right now and moving forward. And therapy will be like,
Mhm.
okay, what happened to you when you were 6? How did you react? Let's dig into that feeling and then just go
Mm.
slower and just kind of like a deeper work. But I
Mhm.
think when you combine emotions from therapy, like you kind of attend to someone's emotions, you validate them, validate their experience and feelings, kind of helps them see like, yeah, that's what I'm feeling, but now I can move forward, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. What do you personally enjoy the best, coaching or therapy? Obviously, you're a therapy student just now, but where do you see yourself really flourishing?
I feel like it will always be a combination of the two, honestly.
Yeah.
Because this semester, the one that just passed, I'm on break now. So this semester that just passed, we had to role play with each other, with our classmates. And someone's the therapist, someone's the client, and there's, I don't know if it's like an official distribution, but one of them is like emotion-focused therapy, and some people are leaning toward more of a solution-focused therapy. And I thought I was the emotion-focused therapy person. But when our lab instructor did a role play with emotion-focused therapy, I was just like, absolutely not. It's way too slow for me. It's just like, it's so deep, like sit in this emotion. How does it feel? What do you see? Like describe. It's just so, it's very fascinating to see. Even as a role play, like people really get into it.
Yeah.
But it's just way too slow. So I think solution focused is more of a coaching approach too, rather than emotion focused.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think also a very big misconception that a lot of clients have when potentially going to see a relationship coach or like therapist in general is like, oh, this professional just wants to keep me there for as long as they can so that they can get the most bang out of my buck. What do you think about
It's
that?
true. It's true for most people, for sure. Most therapists are like, oh, perfect, this client calls me, hasn't had any results in the past 6 months, and I just listen to them talk about their stupid little life for an hour. Like, genuinely. They don't care about you. Yeah, they don't care. They're there to make money. I'm not saying every therapist is like that, so again, don't sue me, but most people are like that because they know how much money they can make in this profession. And to me, it's really sad because I would be pissed off if I had a client and I'm trying everything and the client's not benefiting. And it's just like, we're just not vibing together. You should go find someone else, unless you don't want results. And in that case, you should go find someone else.
Exactly. I think honestly the duty, and I think who said this? Gary V actually might have said it, but I think the duty, professional duty of any single coach, which I'm a social media coach, same exact thing, is to ensure that your client doesn't need you after like a certain period of time, that they can do what you can help them with on their own. That's how you know, I feel like, that you've truly succeeded. Would you say you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Then you can do, say if you're in therapy, you like graduate from therapy and then you do meetings every, I don't know, 3 months, just like a check-in.
Yeah.
But definitely you go through the process and you're like, okay, now I can handle this on my own. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, exactly. Now, segueing into a topic that I really wanted to bring up with long distance relationship. I feel like it is such a common thing nowadays where I hear about people like dating online and meeting online for months, if not years. Actually, I have a friend. She met her current boyfriend and now they live together, like in the same house, state, whatever. But they met like a few years back online. They went to the same school, but they never intersected. But they started dating online and they've been like that for like 2 years until they actually I think they're going to get married actually. And she's crazy because, I mean, she's not crazy. I think it's crazy because she's very young. But what would you say? What's your take on long distance relationships?
It's a very broad topic. There's a lot of success stories, just like there are a lot of failed stories. So you can't just have one opinion on that, I think. If you start dating online and you never meet, then what's the point? Maybe it's just like an excuse not to, to tell other people like, oh yeah, I have a boyfriend, so you don't have to engage in those conversations. I don't know. Or maybe it's just someone to pass the time with. Maybe it's actually to say like, oh, actually, I have a girlfriend, I have a boyfriend. But like, do you really? You're not even in the same room.
Do you feel like a long distance relationship is a real relationship?
I think if two people are working toward moving together and one of them will have to compromise for them to like live in the same basically apartment or a house, then it makes sense. But if it's just like, oh yeah, we've been doing long distance for the past 7 years, it's 7 years of your life. You just do like a FaceTime every day and then you see each other every 6 months. Like, but where's the compromise though? Who's moving and when?
Yeah, I think we had this conversation a while back, but in my mind, it used to be like, oh, if you're dating someone, like you can see each other like once a week. And some people actually do that. But me personally, I have no idea how. Like, I don't understand it at all. I feel like one time, like everything changes in my week at least so much that by the time we see each other next, like a whole different person, you missed a chapter of my life.
I agree. Yeah. Now that I live with my boyfriend, I don't know what it was like when we were dating. I'm like, we would see each other 3 times a week. And sometimes we wouldn't see each other for a week because we both have work. Like, how does that work? How did I not see you every day? It's weird.
Obviously, it depends on people's schedules. Because also with work, it's kind of hard to balance that, or it can be. But definitely, I think seeing each other is such a big part of a relationship. And personally, if I were to enter a long distance one indefinitely, I don't think I could do it. I hate texting. Calling really pisses me off sometimes because like I have stuff to do. I don't want to just be like, okay, so time to call. Like I don't know, not a fan.
Yeah, with my first boyfriend, exclusive tea. With my first boyfriend, we did long distance for a little bit until infidelity entered this relationship.
Infidelity,
Not from my side, FYI.
obviously.
And it was just so embarrassing to have to schedule a FaceTime call, and we were only 3 hours time difference, so like he was 3 hours ahead. We had to schedule a FaceTime call like on a Saturday at like 12 p.m.
Yeah, but I think
Anyway,
if it's a long distance relationship for a period of time, because say one of you has a work opportunity someplace else, I think it's totally doable. But if it's indefinite, I think it can definitely be really tough, and like because there's no conclusion to it, it just kind of goes on and on, you know.
it also depends on how long you've been together. Because if you just met for a week, there's no like inertia to carry you through that period of time. Of I don't know, you have a work opportunity for 6 months, and you've only known each other for like a month or two. There's just not enough of that relationship. But again, if you can make it work, then props to you. You can see each other, hopefully.
And so with relationships, obviously, long distance relationship, there's this really big argument of like, oh, well, while we're still dating, I still have a lot of time to dedicate towards my career and working on myself, which may be true to some extent. But then, how do you feel like people who are in person relationship, how should they balance their time so that they still have time for themselves versus just getting lost in their relationship as a whole?
What do you mean by that?
Because
Like
I
out
feel
of your
like,
daily routine?
well, yeah, a lot of people have this concern. I've heard this from people my age and just like overall my followers, they've been messaging me of like, well, I'm in a relationship now. I want to spend all my time with this person. But how do I make it so that I still make time for myself consciously instead of just like going all in?
Well, maybe doing what you do with the time blocking and scheduling, that can help some people. Or just
Yeah.
having your own routine, how in the morning, my boyfriend has his own morning routine and I have my own. And it's just like the times that we don't really intersect. So it's like, it's his time. He has coffee in the morning by himself with our parrot. And it's her snuggle time and it's his coffee time. And then when I wake up, it's my time. Like I take a shower, I get ready, and then no one's there to interrupt me. So just kind of have your own routine. If you like going for walks by yourself, then go for a walk in the evening and say like, I don't know, you come from work and you're like, I just need some time to recharge, just want to be by myself for half an hour. Then you clean, walk, whatever you do. But just I think communication comes into play if you're in a relationship. So it doesn't confuse the other person as to why you're all of a sudden not home.
So having like non-negotiable time blocks of like, okay, this is my morning routine. This is what I do as my me time.
I mean, you can always negotiate it, you know what I mean? To like make it more efficient for the two of you. But you can say this is I really need 15 minutes to myself in the morning because this is just what brings me joy, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like I want to read a book, and then the other person kind of has to respect it because they also have their time.
What about doing things, especially I think if you live with someone, if you have things that you want to do by yourself, for example, like say, going on a hike or going to the beach. I love going to the beach and like just doing stuff there. What if you tell your partner, like you communicate it to them clearly, like, hey, I want to spend some time like by myself this morning, and then they get offended of like, oh, why can't we just do that together?
I feel that. I feel like at some point I could be the other person being like, why can't we do it together? But I think it just maybe your love language is quality time at that point, and to use like, well, this is a perfect opportunity for us to spend quality time together. So maybe it's the way you communicate that instead of being like, you know what, I just want to be by myself. I'm going to go to the beach by myself. And because that can come off as hurtful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the way you introduce that information. But if you say like, I would love to spend time with you this afternoon. I just wanted to go for a short walk at the beach. Just by myself. I just want to like meditate, collect my thoughts, and I'll be right back. And then this afternoon we can go like to lunch or whatever. That way the other person has something to look forward to, and then they're not like taking personally the fact that you're going by yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. And what would you say is a good structure to communicate any, say, comments or like concerns they have towards the person or the relationship itself?
It's my favorite technique. I think I tell everyone about this technique. I tell all of my clients, even on the free discovery session, FYI, link in bio. It's free. I tell them like, if you can take one thing away from this, even if it's unrelated to your situation, but like this will benefit your life, is the way you sandwich your criticism or complaints or, you know, anything that's like slightly negative. You sandwich it. You say something nice, something kind about their personality, just like genuinely compliment the person.
Mm-hmm.
Then you say something that's not super nice, and then you say something nice again. And that way it limits the other person getting defensive, really, because there's no
Mm-hmm.
grounds for that anymore.
And what's with communication, I think also a big issue is that oftentimes it sounds very accusatory. Like you can be, for example, here's like something I can communicate. Like, oh, hey, I love the fact that you're so caring and thoughtful, but you never bring me flowers. But I know that you're trying. Like that still sounds like very direct, you know? I would get like really offended if that was told to me because I'd be like, whoa, slow down there. So what do you feel like would be a good way to transform that into something more healthy?
I think another thing to focus on, and we were taught this in school when I was getting my bachelor's, and they're drilling this into our brains now in grad school, is that you just use I statements. I statements all the way. You say, or you only say how you feel, and avoid using never, always, those big words that just they're not actually true. Like really, you never get flowers from him. Never. He never does the dishes. Not once. Not one. Not even a little mug. Like it's not.
A
It's
little
not actually true. It's not true. It's just an exaggeration. So you say like, I would feel really appreciated if you got me flowers because to me it's very important. It matters to me and it makes me really happy. Just from your perspective, not like you never do it. Because if someone told you that, you would also be like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Just play that in your head and like, how would you react if someone said that to you?
Yeah, I think what a lot of people fail to do is just put themselves in the other person's shoes. Because obviously, in the heat of the moment, when you're really frustrated, I know this for myself, like it can be really hard to ground yourself and to be like, hey, I feel this and I feel that. So, what would you say is a good way to communicate when, say, you're having like an argument? Because I've heard this thing a lot of times, like in podcasts and in books, about when you're with someone learning how to fight. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, there's a lot of parts that go into this, I think, of having like a healthy argument. Because again, arguing is normal. And even looking at my own personal experience, we are in a completely different place now when we have a miscommunication or something or lack of communication than we were 2 years ago. So it's kind of like a skill that you keep learning and you keep improving. So besides using I statements and trying to sandwich everything, using I statements, again, you just think that it's the two of you versus the problem, not the two of you like this against each other, and the problem is right here in the middle. Because you are a team. You chose this person. You choose to love this person every day. You choose to be with them. You don't have to choose it tomorrow. You don't have to choose it right now, but you do. So it's the two of you versus the problem and not the problem versus, and like the two of you versus each other. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And if you can feel that, you know, it's just the feelings are right. There's so much tension in the room. You can cut it with a knife, with a dull knife. You can cut it with your hand. You're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like, I can't tell him how I feel because I just feel everything. You just say you need a break. Like, let's just come back to this conversation. I really want 30 minutes to myself just to calm down, collect my feelings. Because I also can't communicate my feelings when I'm feeling them. Like, I'm trying to go through them. I can't explain to you what I'm feeling if I'm feeling them right now. Like, give me a sec. So not only, I saw this TikTok of a therapist actually, now I'm using this information for myself. Not only is it communication, it's also comprehension. Like whether they are able to comprehend what you're saying, what you're trying to communicate. And whether you're able to comprehend what you're trying to communicate to.
I think honestly a big part of relationships is something I've noticed in my dating journey is emotional intelligence. But I think once you learn how to master emotional intelligence and you really get on top of it, and also I would love for you to define emotional intelligence from like a relationship perspective. But I feel like once you have that down, it truly helps any and all areas of your life. Because then I feel like you can take criticism so much better in your work, in your career, in your business, just also in personal friendships and just personal relations and obviously relationships overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it plays
How
an important factor.
how do you feel like healthy or mastered emotional intelligence looks like in a relationship?
I think recognizing your own emotions is probably the first step you need to take, is to know what you're feeling and why you're feeling this, what triggers your emotions and what calms them down, to be able to control them. Because feelings are not facts. Okay, they're temporary. Write it down. Where's your notepad at? Write it down. I said what I said.
Yeah. Mhm.
Feelings are not facts. They're here for a moment and then they go away. But the fact stays. Whether you hurt the other person, that stays. The feelings might fade, but the situation is not going anywhere. So I think
Mhm.
recognizing your own feelings and recognizing the feelings of the other person and just trying to put yourself in their shoes and thinking like, how would they feel? Because you already know your perspective, so try to see theirs knowing yours.
Mhm.
You communicated ineffectively, and just put yourself in that person's shoes and be like, how would they feel knowing how I just communicated it to them? And then I
Mhm.
think it gives you a completely different perspective, and you're like, oh, I need to fix a lot of things, which is normal.
For sure. I think self-reflection, and that's something I know you talk about a lot in your content, self-reflection. What's the other term you use? Like or did you say self-reflection?
Self-reflection, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big aspect of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
also with relationships, and I wanted to ask you this, because a lot of, like, I think it's a very emotional subject, like a very touchy one almost.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have trouble controlling their emotions. Like, when I say a lot of people, I also mean myself. Like, I
Mm.
tend to spin out a lot in regarding relationship topics. So what would you say are some good tools to implement to kind of ground yourself and not have as much mental turmoil?
It really depends on the person because, for instance, for you, you like meditating, you
Mm-hmm.
journal. As far as I know, I don't like either of those things. It just takes too long for me. So it just depends on the way you like process information because again, if you can recognize your emotion, you're old enough to take control of it. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
at 2 years old, it's difficult because you have all these new feelings you've never felt before. But I don't think you even remember yourself at 2 having your first big like frustration emotion. Okay, but now
Mm-hmm.
at like 25, 30, you'll know exactly what you're feeling and you need to know how to manage it correctly. So whether that's journaling, meditation, going for a walk, asking for some time and just sitting with yourself and being like, how am I feeling right now? This is what our mom tells me when I'm feeling upset. She's like, do you want to
Mm-hmm.
feel sad right now? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, okay, then just sit there and feel sad. And then in 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
check in with yourself, be like, do I still want to feel sad right now? And if you're like,
Mm-hmm.
no, not really, I don't actually want to feel sad, then you just try and focus on the emotion you want to be feeling, whether that's like calm or joy or just excitement. You just sit there and you're like, just focus and bring that emotion out of you because you have it in you and you can choose to switch your, not mindset, but like your state, really.
I really like that because I think a lot of our actions, I would argue to say pretty much all are a choice. And it seems to trigger a lot of people. Like when you say this is a choice, they're like, no, it's not a choice. I can't. I feel like it's like very much taking the position of a victim and kind of transferring responsibility. Which is why, oh, when I told you I hated you, I didn't mean to say that. But it's like, well, if you said it, you must have meant it because if you didn't mean it, you wouldn't have said it.
I agree. It's responsibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Responsibility, I think, is a big topic in relationships as well. And also,
Yeah.
this brings me to the next topic of toxic relationships. What role do you feel responsibility plays in toxic relationships? Because obviously, if it's a toxic relationship, as far as I know, I'm not an expert in this topic, but it seems to follow like a cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how can a
Yeah.
person take responsibility knowing human psychology and like being trapped in that cycle?
Unfortunately, I think even looking at research, most people who leave a toxic relationship will go back to the same person or enter another toxic relationship. It's a completely different psychology, I think. Like
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it's very easy to judge those people, to be like, why can't you
Mm-hmm.
just leave? But I think it really goes way deeper than that. And for a lot of people, it's basically impossible to leave because, again, not only is the cycle repeating itself 100 times a week because it's like toxic, and then he apologizes, and then it gives you hope, and then like that hope is taken away, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like a circle. And it's really difficult to leave because you're already in there. That's all you know, really. And those people, okay, don't sue me, but a lot of those people really enjoy that roller coaster. They don't want
Mm-hmm.
a calm relationship because to them that would be boring. Like there are definitely people, not saying all of them, but there are definitely individuals who really enjoy being in that cycle.
Yeah. I think that goes, this sort of concept of enjoying the kind of not so great aspects, whether that be a relationship or of life. It goes for a lot of things. For me, for example, mentally, you remember, I used to spin out a lot. Like, I would spin out all the time, but it made my life exciting in a sense. Like, it made me feel alive, as crazy as it sounds. Like, now I'm
Yeah.
a lot more conscious about it and I redirect my energy in other ways. But because I spun out a lot, reflecting on it now, I must have enjoyed that, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, because you also get attention from other people, and a lot of times that's what it's for, basically,
Mm-hmm.
for attention. Because people start consoling you, they start like trying to figure it out with you, and then you're kind of like, you're not necessarily realizing that. I'm not saying that everyone's just so wise and they're like, yeah, that's what I'm doing, and I'm doing this on purpose.
I know
This is
exactly what I'm
basically
doing right now.
this is basically my part-time gig. You're not saying that, but
Hmm.
it's kind of like subconscious in a way. But you do like the attention, you do like the fact that then he like comes and apologizes, or however it goes. Toxic friendships are also a thing, so it's a tricky one.
For relationship coaching, right now, for example, obviously I couldn't do it because we're related. It would be unethical. But say we had like you didn't know me before this podcast, right? What if I came in with my partner and I was like, hey, can you observe us, like, to make sure we're like in a healthy relationship? Is that something that you could do as a relationship coach? Kind of like with, with therapy. I think you were telling me this with the children playing. Like a family therapist observes them playing and it kind of figures out the dynamic and where the issue is stemming from. Could the same be done for a relationship?
Well, I guess so. I'm just not sure. Like, if you are my client and, we've had, say, like 3 sessions together, and all of a sudden you bring your boyfriend, it wouldn't be ethical in therapy, and it's not ethical in coaching either.
What if it's couples coaching or therapy from the get-go?
Well, therapy is different than, in
Yeah.
therapy, you have 3 clients in the room, always. You have, like, you would be the client, he would be the
Mm-hmm.
client, and your relationship is the third client.
Uh-huh.
That's how we're taught. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But in
Mm-hmm.
coaching, I think since it's very goal focused and it's like, okay, so where you guys are right now, where do you want to be? You would have to not just like, oh, are we in a healthy relationship? We want to determine that. You would need to know where you're going. Because, like, okay, you can be in a very destructive relationship, but maybe you can still achieve your goal if that's what works for you.
Mm-hmm. You seem to talk about a common goal in a relationship a lot. And obviously because you live with your boyfriend, I think like it's like not marriage, but like creating and building a life together, right? But what about people who are, say, younger, like especially in their early 20s or maybe even teens, or like people who are maybe older, but they're just are not sure that they ever want to get married or start a family? What would the common goal in that relationship be?
It depends on the relationship. Do you want to just travel together? Do you want to, like, you don't have to get married. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
are never wanting to get married, and that's fine. They still can live with each other, have children, and stuff. We have examples in our lives of people whose relationships are a success and they never wanted to get married, and some of them still aren't. We've been together for a
Mm-hmm.
billion years. So I think it just depends. Like, you want to travel? Do you want to just have like a live-in housekeeper? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are you trying to go in that relationship? Whatever it fulfills for you, then that's what works for you.
Do you feel like you would need to identify a common goal with your partner? Like to be like, hey, we're officially starting dating now. So what would you say our common goal is? Or is this just something that you determine and figure out for yourself?
I think a lot of times it's unspoken because you enter a relationship knowing that this is going to benefit you in some way. I can't
Mm-hmm.
imagine having that conversation with my boyfriend, for instance. Like, we already know, like, we kind of both already had the vision of where we want to be, and obviously it adjusts as time passes and because we're together and not just like one person only taking care of yourself. There's 2 people now and a bird, so 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like unspoken, but at the same time, you understand a lot of like values, morals, all that stuff just kind of aligns for you. Otherwise, you will be confused. You will have to have that conversation, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is it's important to have values and morals of both people in a relationship aligned, because that way you're kind of progressing towards the same thing, right?
Yeah. And in terms of a goal, it can be like, okay, we want to buy a house. Let's see how we can make it happen in the next year. And then that can be your common goal. And you can start like saving up for it, getting another job to like save up for it and stuff like that. So that can be your common goal. But in terms of like an entire relationship, say you want to spend your entire life with that person, how the heck can you set a goal for when you're 80 if you're 20 right now? Like, what do you want to do? I want to have 17 grandchildren. 5 of them will be boys and the rest are girls. Like, that's just kind of unrealistic.
For sure. I think also something I want to talk about is the fear of commitment. Because where we're from, like Russian culture, it doesn't really exist. But for me personally, I wouldn't say it's a fear of commitment, but talking about goals, like with my current partner, I don't really have a goal. All I know is it enriches my life, but I don't want to think too far into the future. Like, I don't like that. Like, thinking about like marriage and children, because I know for a fact that's not happening until like an X number of years based on my life vision, right? So would you have you ever worked with clients who did have a fear of commitment or like anything in that realm?
Yeah, I have. I feel like in a lot of cases it's men who are like,
Yeah.
I don't want to commit.
Yeah.
Why would we put a label on it? Label means nothing. Well, if it means nothing, then why don't you put on it? You know what I mean?
Ooh. Where do you feel like that stems from? Hot take.
The responsibility, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just don't want to take responsibility for another person because the relationship it's two, and you are responsible for that person a little bit. Not like for a child, but still, there's 2 of you now,
Yeah.
and maybe a parrot, so 2.5.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes from that.
But I think also to me, fear of commitment is a little crazy. Not to invalidate anyone's feelings, but for me, if you're like, say you are afraid to commit to relationships, okay, you commit, but they can always break up. Same with marriage, you can always divorce. Like that option is always on the table for you. So then why have the fear in the first place? I guess it's different with children, for example, because obviously, like, if a child's born, like a child's born, it's your kid, you know? But I feel like if it's a relationship, it's something that's not very tangible, so it's something that you can always opt out of.
I know. I feel like not a lot of people realize that they have that choice
Mm-hmm.
because just recently, I've had a few girls who came to me as clients, obviously, and they
Mm-hmm.
were in a toxic relationship. I would say just unhappy, you know. And they're like, I don't know. We promised each other we would like make it work, and it's been 3 years, and it just doesn't get any better. It's like, but you do have the choice to leave, though, and I don't think they even see that because to them, like, oh, once we're committed, we have to make it work. You don't have to, though. If it doesn't work for you anymore, you don't have to make it work.
Yeah,
Who
I
told
think
you that?
that's so wise. Exactly. Who told you that? But also, I think this is why, for me personally, an emphasis I've always placed and will always continue to place, just in relationships, is on personal growth and development. Because I think once you know your own worth and your own value, then everything just becomes so much clearer, and you always act not out of selfishness in a bad way, but selfishness in a way where you always choose yourself and your best interests, which is how I, at least personally, think it should be in relationships. Would you agree?
Yeah, you choose yourself first because your happiness comes first. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have an example in my life. She's not a client, but it's just someone I know.
Mm-hmm.
And she's in a very unhappy marriage right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the marriage has been unhappy for a few years. And every time they try to make it work, it doesn't get any better, it just keeps getting worse. And so then I'm thinking, obviously, I'm not in her shoes, so I don't know exactly what she feels and what her decision process is.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, okay, I'm 25 right now. If I am miserable for the next 20 years, when I'm 45, I'll look back at my life and be like, what was I doing? It's so much time that you were just genuinely miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that relationship will always be on your mind. You'll always think about, like, oh, that was such a difficult time. You know? Like, think
Yeah.
about when maybe in middle school when you were not having the best time of your life. Like, you think about it, you're like, oh, I'm glad that's done. You're kind of
Yeah.
like, you know? For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's when we moved here. First 3 months, absolute blur. Like the most stressful time of my life. Didn't speak the
Yeah.
language, nothing. No friends, nothing. I was 15. So I look at it and I'm like, good job you went through it, but I never want to go through it again. And I hope my children never have to go through it because it's just like, ugh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So keeping that in mind, what would you say are the top 3 signs for you to know that you're in a relationship that doesn't benefit you?
Top 3.
Or like any 3, but just so our listeners have something to go off of.
What are your top 3? You go first. Put you on the spot.
Okay, let me think about this. I would say one of them is if you see yourself straying away from your goals that you have set maybe before you were in a relationship, and not like a good way where you're like, oh, I've evolved, like I have different goals now. No, in a way where you're kind of like, well, like you start getting more limiting beliefs about yourself. Like your confidence dwindles, your motivation dwindles, your inspiration dwindles. I think that's a very good telltale sign that this is not working. I would say also, secondly, probably emotionally as well. If you notice that you're having more negative emotions than positive ones, I think it's a giant red flag. Because I think, honestly, relationships are just meant to make you happy. That's what I think. And if majority of the time you're not happy, I think you should dip. My humble personal opinion. I would say those are the top two. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I think I would add to the first one if you start compromising on yourself.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like your own beliefs, your own morals, and kind of convincing yourself that you're okay with something when you're not actually okay. Like you're genuinely deep inside, you're not comfortable with that. But you're like, you know what? I love him, so I should be comfortable with that. Or, you know, like, oh, he doesn't let me wear bikinis in Instagram pictures. So
Oh.
it's like, I have to respect him. But like deep inside, you know that it's innocent and you want to do it. I feel like in that case, it's also something to think about. Not necessarily your entire relationship is just gonna go straight into the bin
Mm-hmm.
with, you know, but still, it's like a little, little ding. Think about that.
To me, and this is a hot take, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, but to me, the craziest thing ever, and it honestly pisses me off, I'll be super honest, is with this whole notion of like respect. Oh, if you respect me, you're not going to have any guy friends. Oh, if you respect me, you're not going to wear any revealing clothes. Like it, because I feel like it's such a push on your individualism as a person that it's like, it's crazy to me.
I think it comes from the desire to control. I just recently recorded a
Yeah.
reel on that of when in relationships, boyfriends don't let girlfriends wear like revealing clothing or whatever
Mm-hmm.
clothing. Honestly, they can even say a hoodie is too revealing at this point. Like your neck is showing, covered
Mm-hmm.
with a scarf. And in the comments, like the girls were like, yeah, I was in a relationship like that. He never let me wear like skirts. But men were like, no, it's about respect though,
Oh my god.
because if she's wearing this, then she should expect the fact that like men are gonna hit on her. And I told him, John, an open door is not an invitation, okay?
My
And a lot of
gosh.
men deleted their comments after I responded to them. I was like, what are you talking about? Because the girls
They
were like,
should.
yeah, what the heck? And the guys were like,
But also, with that, I gotta say, I love how you respond to that. I think it's so cool that you handled it. If I was first coming across your video and I saw your response like that, I'd follow it immediately. But also, something I oftentimes see, and it also like makes me just so, I guess maybe it's because I'm being judgmental here, but a lot of girls kind of romanticize this idea of control, of like, oh, I have a protective boyfriend, like he doesn't let me do these things, but he does this. Where do you think that stems from? I think it's absolutely crazy because to me also it's like such a restriction on my freedom, and I think at least this is how I think. But in a relationship, the most important thing to me is my freedom and my independence. Otherwise, like I cannot.
I agree with you. For me, it would also be an immediate, enormous boundary cross. It would
Mm-hmm.
throw me off so much. I would help him pack his bags. Like I would be so just in the haze. I would be packing for him. So I feel like that if you observe those relationships growing up, that's all you know.
Mm-hmm.
To you, that's normal.
Yeah.
So to leave that is therapy. I don't think coaching can genuinely help you like get rid of that cycle and just those beliefs that you've had since you were a child. Because if your
Mm-hmm.
parents were like that, if most of your friends are like that, to you that's just what you know and that's normal. So
Yeah.
you can't just like get rid of it and be like, no, this is not the way to think because like that's exactly how they think. And then
Mm-hmm.
men in that situation just take advantage of that because they get to control, they get to feel like big and powerful. They don't even need muscles anymore because they're just already so big. He makes his girlfriend just stay home and cook and clean because that's what she's supposed to do.
Oh my god.
You know? So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
and then maybe it's also fear in that. Like she is genuinely scared to say anything because what if he has like temper problems or something? Every relationship is different, so it's hard to just generalize on this topic. It's a very, very
Yeah.
big topic. But I think that
Mm-hmm.
men who do try to like limit your freedom in whatever way is just the need
Mm-hmm.
for control. So they're probably insecure. In most
Yeah.
cases, I think they're insecure, and insecurity comes from fear. In most cases, all of the emotions are rooted in fear. In most cases,
Mm-hmm.
like 99% of situations. And the
Wow.
girls
Mm-hmm.
too. Like there's also fear. Like, oh, I don't want to be alone. Fear of, I don't know, anything, you know?
Mm-hmm. I think you've read this book, Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus, but it
Mm-hmm.
talks a lot about kind of like it's like biologically almost rooted fears for men and women. For men, it's incompetence. Men are really scared of looking incompetent because that's why I think obviously it's a very general thing because every man is different, same with every person being different. But I've noticed this in men a lot, like generally as a population, of really caring about how they look and like really trying to impress. But then with women, that fear is not being worthy. Would you say, from what you've observed in your practice, in your work, that's something that does ring true?
For men, yes, I think their ego is just going to be shattered if you tell him he's a loser. Honestly, in a lot
Oh
of
my
cases,
God.
it's kind of sad because
Yeah.
it's just like, dude, but like you can just look at it from a different perspective. He's like, no, you think I'm a loser, like I'm worthless, and
Yeah,
he's
that's
he's gonna go with the boys, and they're gonna go like freaking play soccer or basketball and just talk about life and chicks. Because to him it's like
Jokes.
the ego is shattered, and he's gonna be like, but you're fat anyway.
You're ugly anyway. I didn't like you anyway.
Yeah, so it's just like, oh, okay, that's fine. But for girls in that situation, it's just like I think insecurity and fear, like we talked about before.
Yeah, because then that also goes with, for women, I know this. And there are different takes on this, so I want to hear your thoughts. But some girls are like, well, if you tell your boyfriend to unfollow Instagram models, but he doesn't, that's a red flag. But to me, the fact that you tell him in the first place is crazy. Like, what?
Yeah, it also comes from insecurity and the need to control, because why else would you ask him to do that? First of all, like, it's not like, why is he looking? Why can't he look? Okay, why can't he? He will be looking anyway. He can have another Instagram account that you won't know about. He can have a second phone that you won't know about. It's just like, if he's just looking, what's your problem? He has his own motivations, so like you also want to know what those motivations are. Like, why are you looking? Not in a controlling way, but just like out of curiosity, asking for a friend. Why do you only have Instagram models and you're following? But I think
Yeah.
as soon as you tell someone to like stop doing something because it makes you feel uncomfortable, it just shows your own insecurity.
Yeah.
And like, why are you trying to control that person? What if he's following a girl because she posts bomb ass workouts? So what? Just because she's a female doesn't mean she's a threat to you if you're confident, secure, you have trust, you have communication, you have freedom, blah, 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 blah. Why are you threatened?
Yeah, truly. I think honestly, most of relationship problems, if we're talking about like coaching problems, can be solved if you know your own worth in a relationship. Because as soon as insecurity comes into play, and I think it comes into play for a lot of people, like vast majority, and that's fine. Just all about learning how to manage it. But I think if you know who you are as a person, you know your own value in a relationship, just a lot of that BS goes away.
That's why coaching is very beneficial, I feel like, for one-on-one versus a couple, because the two people are still very different.
Yeah.
And they might like just not have the same opinions or like have different goals, but still want to be in the same relationship. So it's better to work on one-on-one. And like you said in the beginning, I think everything starts with you, with your own, like with everything that has, my gosh, I can't English right now, with just yourself. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really great note to end our podcast on. But before we do, what's a really great way for our listeners to connect with you?
Wait, we never spilled any tea about exes, actually. We promised them, but we never did.
I know. Okay, what tea do you want to spill? We're running out of time.
You spill first.
I
How
don't know
to
what to
spot a
spill.
liar.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is tea. I've never shared this in my life. I did breakup diaries, and a lot of people message me about like, oh, my boyfriend just broke up with me. What do I do? I always redirect them to you, Aleksandra, just so you know. So if they message you, chances are they message me. But yeah. So my ex-boyfriend, and I never shared this anywhere. Like I was very respectful, but um, I think he was a compulsive liar. He lied a lot, and that
Pathological
was,
liar.
I think, pathological. Yeah, because that relationship, it affected me a lot more than quote unquote it should, because it wasn't even about the person or like getting over him. I got over him before I broke up with him, but it was just a matter of like I was just so deeply hurt by it. Like my ego was shattered because I hate lying. Okay, everybody does white lies, it's fine, but like always lie, it just, I don't know, like it developed a lot of insecurity and mistrust towards people in me. Like it took me a while to get over just because of the lying. So how do you spot a liar? um I mean, I think it just comes with experience, honestly. Because after him, like, he taught me such a valuable lesson that anything anybody would ever say after him, I would triple and double check. Like, I'd bring it up in conversation again just to see if they had the same answer. Because I was so paranoid. I just, like, I don't know. Change me forever.
Yeah,
That's all I can say.
he would lie all the time, and he would lie to everyone, because even when my boyfriend had conversations with him to like find out the details about like his work or whatever, he was lying about everything. I think like literally everything. So he would just like try to have a more in-depth conversation, and the guy would just kind of avoid that conversation. Like he would never go in details because he never made them up. He didn't have the time. Yeah, so he was like, again, since everyone, like, you trust the person, obviously. You're not going to assume that every single person is lying, so you think that's true. But then when things start not adding up, and when other people are like, this is actually suspicious, I spoke to him and it just sounds a little weird, you're starting to think about it.
Yeah. I think that's just why I would recommend to, if you start dating somebody and like it's not just like a little fling, it's like someone you're kind of serious about, more or less, then just introduce them to people that you trust. That could be your friends, your family, and then afterwards get like a reaction, like a second opinion almost. For me, I knew I had to do that after that because I was so paranoid about it happening again. Like I did not, under any circumstances, I did not want to be tied to a liar again.
So I became a liar. I switched it. I turned the tables. Now I am the liar.
And actually with my current boyfriend, and once again, this tea I've never spilled anywhere, but he met my family technically the day that we started dating officially, but like when we met, we were not. He thought it was the craziest thing because he comes from a very different culture where like families like, oh, like you meet the family, like you guys are super serious. To me, I don't care. I honestly wish a lot of the first dates I would go on that I could like introduce them to you guys, because they're honestly just cool people. Like, you know how many of them were academics and engineers, like just PhD. Like it was just so fun.
I know. We just have a very special relationship in our family, really, because we're all very close, and I cannot imagine like a random ass. Sorry, I don't think I can say that word on here. I cannot imagine a random stranger being like super close to me, and then I'm like, yeah, you're like my bestie. I would give my leg for you. It's just like, okay, friends come and go, but these friends, like sisters, they won't go anywhere. We're genetically tied, so we're kind of stuck in a good way.
Okay, and before we go, your turn to spill some tea about your ex.
I'll spill the tea about my ex-boyfriend, not my first boyfriend. I've only had two. Not much to tell you.
Third time's the charm. Third time's the charm.
Really got lucky with this one.
No, literally.
Quite literally. Yeah, I went on a few dates, and that was also a very interesting experience. If we do another podcast, we can talk about
you know what? I'm thinking that with this podcast under it, we have like ask us any questions and we'll answer it in the next podcast because this is too good. Like this is too juicy. We have to keep going.
Yeah. Okay. We should really do, guys. If you have any questions, especially in terms of like dating and like online dating apps, going on dates, please ask, because we both have a lot of experience with that, and it will be really, really funny to talk about. I feel like I would want to listen to what you have to say, because even though I already know most of it, I still want to listen. It's so much.
100%. I know. No, I've never spilled this much tea in my life. Okay, but go on.
But with my ex-boyfriend, there's so much, honestly. That relationship really just put me, I wouldn't say in a dark place, but I felt like I was going gray. Because I felt like I was doing everything and nothing was appreciated. Not even just like, oh, you don't appreciate me doing the dishes. No, it's just like, it was so draining. I wouldn't even say he was manipulating. It was just so incredibly draining. It was just gross. But I'll tell you one story when I stayed for a sleepover there. Also, another sign, I think, if your body cannot relax and sleep next to the person you're dating, it's probably not the right person for you. I could never fall asleep. I think the longest I've slept next to him was like half an hour. And then the entire night I would just be awake. And there was nothing I could do. Like, I just couldn't sleep. So after a sleepover like that, where I was just awake all night, basically, he lived with his mom and sister. Pretty sure he still lives with them. And then they were like, he said they were very close. I think in somewhat a concerning way sometimes, but you do you, whatever works for you, boo. And so we leave, we go into the living room, like I make the bed, whatever. And he starts eating Cheerios, and he hasn't brushed his teeth yet. And I was like, oh, I almost said his name. I was like, what are you doing? And then his mom sees it, and she's like, go brush your teeth. Your breath stinks. Please go brush your teeth. You can't eat breakfast without brushing your teeth. And she started begging him to brush his teeth. It wasn't the first or last time she's ever begged him to brush his teeth in front of me. But I was sitting there and I was just so embarrassed. I was like, do I leave now? Or like, is it awkward if I just got up and left? It was horrible. And then he was just so annoyed. And he was like, fine. So he left his bowl of Cheerios and just went in the bathroom and like brushed his teeth. And he was 23, 24.
Yeah. So I would say that's one of the other red flags.
He doesn't brush his teeth. He doesn't want to shower after a workout. If his mom begs
Personal
him
hygiene.
to.
Personal hygiene, guys. If he doesn't,
Yeah.
I think maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah, it would be a great idea.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that.
Of
That's
course, I have a
horrible.
lot of stories from him. So guys, comment anything, honestly.
Yes.
It would be epic.
Okay. We're totally doing another podcast episode. Okay, and now I feel like this is a good segue to connect with you. How can our listeners work with you, connect with you, follow you?
Well, I post primarily on Instagram. You can watch my YouTube videos if you want. They're more lifestyle than expert stuff. Really just something lighthearted for you to enjoy parts of my life. TikTok, where I just talk on TikTok. Or Instagram at real.Aleksandra. I read my DMs. I respond to everyone.
Okay,
Would be
perfect.
happy to
And
see you there.
the free discovery session is in the description of this podcast episode.
Yes. But also, I'm getting a group together right now. So if you're interested in group coaching, spots are very limited. If there are just so many people, then we're going to do 2 groups. But as of right now, the idea is just 1 group. So if you are interested, if you know somebody who is, please direct them to me. DM me on Instagram and we will have a nice, juicy conversation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. We have to do a second episode. I'm serious. I think it'll be so much fun.
We will next year.
Yes, exactly. 2024. For all those of us listening, remember, we're going together always. 3, 2, 1. Launch to success with Vera V.